The year was 1857. California's gold fields still echoed with the wild clang of pickaxes and the rough laughter of men chasing dreams. Dusty camps dotted the foothills, rivers shimmered with promise, and hope was worth its weight in gold. Among those who struck fortune was a quiet, strong man named Henry Gordier, a Frenchman by birth, a prospector by destiny. For years, Gordier roamed the golden lands of California, his eyes scanning every glimmering stream bed. He worked through blistering heat, hunger, and solitude, yet he found what most men only dreamed of, nuggets of gold, glistening like captured sunlight. But unlike the many who wasted their fortune on whiskey and cards, Gordier wanted peace. He wanted land, a life rooted in stillness, not the chaos of camps. And so, in the spring of 1857, he purchased an acreage on Baxter Creek, north of Honey Lake, beneath the quiet shadow of Bald Mountain. The area was beautiful, untouched, endless fields, crisp streams, the wind whispering through the pines. It was here, in what is now Lassen County, that Henry Gordier dreamed of spending his final years as a rancher. He bought cattle, too, a grand herd from a group of Mormons traveling back to Salt Lake City. His friend and former prospecting partner, Isaac Colthurst, helped him make the deal. Together, they envisioned a quiet life of ranching, far from the violence and greed that haunted the gold camps. But peace is a fragile thing, and Honey Valley had shadows of its own. Just north of Gordier's ranch, nestled by Lassen Creek, stood a lonely cabin. Inside lived two men whose names stirred fear in the hearts of locals, John Mullen and Asa Snow. They were drifters, men of uncertain pasts and dark habits. Snow was said to have killed a man before coming to the valley, and Mullen, well, everyone knew he was a cattle thief. But the valley seemed to attract not just outlaws, but something darker still. For in that same year, a fugitive rode into the land, William Combs Edwards, wanted for the cold-blooded murder of a postman named Snelling in Merced County. A bounty of $1,500 hung over his head. Edwards had escaped justice and found refuge in Genoa, Nevada, where he befriended a gambler with a reputation as slick as the cards he played, William Lucky Bill Thorrington. Lucky Bill, they called him, a man who smiled too easily, who gambled with lives as if they were coins. He was charming, dangerous, and impossible to trust. When Edwards came to Honey Valley, he sought shelter with Mullen and Snow. The three men soon began prospecting a place of mine near their cabin, or so they claimed. But others said they spent more time scheming than digging. One cold morning in 1858, Lucky Bill rode out from Genoa and paid the trio a visit. He had heard whispers that Gordier, the French rancher, owned a vast herd of cattle. He promised the others he'd talk to Gordier, maybe buy a few. But the gambler never made that visit. Instead, he left with a plan already growing dark in his mind. After Lucky Bill's departure, Mullen and Edwards took it upon themselves to approach Gordier. They offered to buy cattle. Gordier, polite yet firm, refused. His herd was not for sale. They left empty-handed. But in their silence, resentment brewed, and greed began to whisper. Winter began to melt from the valley. The pines swayed under soft winds, the river thawed, and life returned to the land. Yet, one man had vanished. Henry Gordier, the quiet rancher, the neighbor everyone admired, was gone. At first, no one worried. Maybe he had gone to Carson Valley, maybe to San Francisco. But weeks passed, and there was no word. His cattle grazed untended. His cabin door creaked in the wind. Then came Asa Snow's story. He told the neighbors that Gordier had decided to return to France, that he had sold his property to Snow, Mullen, and Edwards before leaving. A simple tale, but it didn't sit right. Gordier was kind, friendly, and deeply rooted to his land. Why would he leave without saying goodbye? When a letter arrived from France, sent by Gordier's own brother, the truth began to unravel. The letter was returned with the claim that Henry had gone home, but his brother knew Henry's heart. He would never leave America, he said, not without telling me. Then the valley began to whisper. Something was wrong. And when the neighbors went to question Mullen and Edwards, they were gone, vanished overnight. Their cabin left cold and empty. Fear settled like frost across Honey Valley. Men gathered their horses, rifles slung across their shoulders. They began to search through the fields, the creek beds, the nearby forests. What they found still chills the memory of Lassen County. Near a smoldering fire pit, they found metal buttons, burned, twisted, and patches of blood dried into the soil. The air smelled faintly of smoke and death. Following the trail toward the Susan River, they found something worse. A large sack, a rope, and inside, the decomposed body of Henry Gordier, tied to a stone and sunk beneath the cold current. His murder was no longer a rumor. It was truth. The discovery shook Honey Valley to its core. The settlers were a tight-knit group, bound by hardship and trust. The murder of one of their own, a man of peace and kindness, was a wound that demanded justice. And so they formed a posse. The first to be captured was Asa Snow, the man who had claimed Gordier sold him the ranch. Snow denied everything. He said he knew nothing, that the others, Mullen and Edwards, were the guilty ones. But the evidence, the timing, the lies, they were enough to seal his fate. He was taken before a local jury, tried, and found guilty. The verdict was swift, the sentence final. Snow was led to a tall pine tree near the shore of Honey Lake. The wind howled across the valley that day, cold and merciless. As the rope was placed around his neck, Snow looked up the branches above, perhaps searching for forgiveness, perhaps just for the sky. Moments later, justice came in the form of silence. Beneath that same tree, his body was buried. But justice wasn't done. A group of men rode west of Genoa, Nevada, where rumors said Edwards and Lucky Bill were hiding. The journey took days across snow-capped passes and bitter winds. But they found them, both of them. Edwards, the killer, and Lucky Bill, the gambler who had orchestrated the deceit. The people of Genoa wasted no time. A mob gathered. Edwards was dragged to gallows. His crimes shouted aloud: murder, theft, betrayal. He was hanged that same week. And when the people turned to Lucky Bill, they saw the face of charm stripped of its deceit. He, too, was hanged, his body left swinging in the cold Nevada dusk. As for John Mullen, the last of three, he disappeared into the wilderness, a ghost in the Sierras. He was never seen again. But even after their deaths, Honey Valley couldn't rest, because the gold, Gordier's fortune, was still missing. For years after Gordier's murder, the locals searched. They combed every inch of his ranch, the fields, the creek beds, the ruins of his cabin. They dug under old oak trees, followed the patterns of stones, and sifted the soil with trembling hands. Nothing, not a single trace of the treasure that Gordier had so carefully hidden. He was known to keep his gold close, to bury it in secret spots around his property, perhaps beneath the hearth, or near the spring where he watered his cattle. Some said he carried it in small sacks, hidden beneath fence posts or buried under the roots of an apple tree that once stood behind his cabin. But the search always ended in frustration. Time passed, the ranch decayed, and the earth swallowed its secrets. Then, nearly 20 years later, a woman named Mary L. Dunn came to Honey Valley. The cabin was gone, replaced by weeds and silence. She had heard the stories, whispers of gold still glimmering beneath the soil. And on a bright afternoon, she found it, just one nugget, a small, perfect piece of gold, heavy, radiant, like a fragment of Gordier's lost fortune. Excited, she returned the next day with two companions. Together, they searched for hours, their picks striking earth, their eyes wide with hope. They found more, small pieces, scattered like crumbs of sunlight. But that was all. The great treasure of Henry Gordier, the hoard that had lured greed, blood, and murder, was still missing. To this day, no one has found it. Today, Honey Valley lies quiet, a vast, lonely stretch of land beneath the winds of Lassen County. The pines still whisper in the cold air. Baxter Creek still runs clear. But beneath that earth, perhaps, the gold still sleeps. They say if you stand by the river where Gordier's body was found, you can still feel the valley holding its secrets close. The faint shimmer of buried dreams, the echo of a prospector's last breath. Treasure hunters have come and gone. Metal detectors hum across the land. Maps are drawn. Theories are spun. Some say the gold was already taken by the killers before they fled. Others insist Gordier hid it too well, that even death couldn't reveal its place. But maybe, just maybe, that's how Henry Gordier wanted it. He lived for gold, but he died because of it. Perhaps in the end, his true legacy wasn't wealth, but the mystery itself, the story that keeps the valley alive, whispering through time. As the sun sets behind Bald Mountain, the light fades to amber. The land glows softly, as if the earth itself remembers. The tale of greed, betrayal, and the unbroken silence of treasure buried deep beneath its roots. Somewhere out there, in the rolling field south of Bald Mountain, under layers of dust and pine needles, Henry Gordier's gold still waits for the one who can find it. Or maybe it waits for no one at all.